Every life has a soundtrack. Join me as we invite guests to share their journey through music, one song at a time. 10 moments, 10 memories. I'm your host, Sean, and welcome to 10 Tracks.
Are you ready?
Welcome to 10 Tracks. My guest today is Pete A. Turner, former U.S. Army counterintelligence agent with over 1,000 missions in conflict zones in a variety of countries like Bosnia, Egypt, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He is also the executive producer and host of the Break It Down show, and the show's been running for over 10 years and has over 2,000 episodes. Pete, welcome to 10 Tracks.
Love it. Thanks, man. Every time I hear that, I think I cannot believe who is this guy, and it's like I'm just me to me, and you look, you know what it is when you have a show and how hard it is. So one, I mean, just thank you for having me on. I was so excited to be able to do this. This reminds me of the old Desert Island Discs conversation that we had in Rolling Stone, and I think there's still a product like that in England. But that it's neat to think about, these conversations. I used to work at Tower back in the old days, and that was like the cultural icon magnet, and people would come to us to understand things, and you might ask him like, what are your Desert Island Discs, and to get an idea of what they wanted to hear. So the other thing I got to say is hi to everybody else out there. Thank you all for listening, because it's a big deal to give your time to us. And so between Sean and I mean, I know we'll have a good conversation, but I appreciate all of you who are listening and watching, because this is the whole point here, is to do these great things. So thank you everybody. I appreciate being on.
Pete, just for people who don't know you and know your story, where are you right now in the world?
I'm in Orange County. Orange County is, I'm kind of by Disneyland, if that's probably the easiest way to say it. If you want to say that's LA, then great. That's where I'm at.
Southern California, beautiful place to be.
Yeah. Yes.
So 2,000 episodes. I mean, I'm sitting here getting close to 24. And I've, the editing to doing this all myself, having the editing to the promotion to social media. Yeah. I'm thinking 2,000. Yeah. Wow, that's pretty incredible. Now, you mostly are on video through YouTube, or do you also have an audio version that goes?
I no longer post to podcast channels, because I don't find that has value. I used to do all the things that you're talking about. Matter of fact, I used to have this show called Album Fights, and I still may do one from time to time, but it was so much work that it wasn't worth the work to do it. And so basically in an album fight, you take two albums, and it's like Purple Rain's an album we'll talk about later, right? There's 9 tracks in that. So you take another 9-track album and you have them go round to round, round 1, round 2, all the way down. Each song is a round. And you go head to head. Man, the amount, and I had 3 judges, I had a host, I had all kinds of, and it was a really fun project, but oh my God, it took hours and hours and hours and hours to make these things. And so I can appreciate if you're editing, and oh my God, anybody who doesn't understand, just booking people and getting them to communicate, set up a playlist like you have them do. All that is extra work that you have to account for and have to worry about and have to touch, but not touch too. Oh my God, it's so much work. I appreciate you doing it, man.
Well, and I pay myself the staff for doing it, because I don't have extra staff support for that at the moment. So it's like you get a lot to do, but it's the value is to kind of doing this and talking to people and learning about music is a big passion of mine. So when I get to speak to other people that really are interested in music and want to share stories around the music that's important to them, it's incredible. I've learned so much from guests, because they've taught me about new music, new genres, new areas of songs that I've not really explored before. Some obviously in different languages, or maybe from their country. So there's so much to do. Can you tell me a little bit about, we're going to go deeper into your background, but
Right.
Your role in particular when you were in the army was counterintelligence, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. My job, so there's a lot of facets within, and first there's a lot of sub-disciplines, and then they're all multifaceted. And so my version of counterintelligence can be completely foreign to somebody else in my field, and we would be able to talk and understand each other, but the day-to-day motions of those jobs would not in any way correlate with the other. So I was a particular kind of counterintelligence agent where I was a ground collector in combat zones. That's the primary experience that I had. And I've got world class at that. I just did so much of it that there is nobody who's going to out expert me, right? And I'm not bragging. I'm just, this is a matter of fact. I made all of the mistakes and just slowly eliminated them over time to where I'm highly adaptable in the worst areas. And my job is to find the most dangerous people. Sometimes that's us, but I have to relate to these people. So vile people from any other context, any other kind of ethical framework, these are vile people that we should not be talking to, but someone has to be that broker.
Yeah.
And that guy was often me. And so that's a lot of what I did was I'd leave the American camp or the International Forces camp, and I would go talk to locals. And I couldn't do that enough. But if I did it too much, then the Americans or the international forces wouldn't trust me because they don't know who I am, and I would lose. I was always balancing like access versus like relevance, and it's a very tough battle to fight, especially when you're like a one man team. Because usually it's just me when I do it. Maybe there's two or three people with me on a team, and I don't want to diminish the role that they play. But I'm a particular kind of guy where it's hard to help me because my work is so specific and my skill set is so elevated. I have to slow down usually to help someone else get up to a place where they can help me, and that's not all that valuable. So yeah, very very busy work, very dangerous work, and enriching. I learned so much by talking to people all over the place. Just and you know how this. You're an international dude. You get it. Like the more you interact with other people, the more you get people. And I guess my one of my catchphrases is I just like to let folks be folks. And let them be
Yeah.
folks right where they're at, and I'll figure out how to adapt to their environment because I'm new to them and they don't need me. And so to be useful to somebody else, I've got to be able to understand their world. And I let folks be folks, and that's the first step.
How much preparation before you go to some of these countries did you have to do some back understanding culturally? You know, there's obviously different respect for their traditions, etc. But I imagine you must do some prep work just to make sure you're respectful, but also you're doing your job and what you have to get.
Yeah, I didn't start at this level, but what I would do now is I would essentially do no work to do that because I understand the steps no matter where I go. I have a universal method of doing this. And I
Mhm.
worry less about giving offense and lacking respect. And I respect by allowing that person from that nation or just a different town, a different way of life, right? They're all culturally different, but I allow that person to be great at what they do. I allow them to be proud of where they're from. I allow them to be mad at whoever they're going to be mad at. I just allow them to be them. That's the whole thing about letting folks be folks. I don't ever try to out Iraq an Iraqi. So if I prepare, I know everything about Iraq, and I'm not going to say I don't prepare, but I get to as close to not preparing as possible, and I prepare way less than somebody else. Everybody else is trying to understand everything, so when they can go in, they can apply that knowledge in a way that it speeds them up. I would say, for my line of work, that's not helpful. It's better
Okay.
that I learn who you are in your space, and I'm supposed to be uncomfortable. I don't get to be comfortable living in your space, but I do have to understand who you are so you can teach me, you can inculcate me so that I can now better understand who you are instead of having this paradigm put over the top of that. So now I'm trying to communicate between two different groups. And this may not sound like spy stuff, but this is how I do it. So you have the guy who's living in, I don't know, the Germany in Bavaria, right? And I'm trying to communicate his need, his world, what matters to him on the ground level. I call it the ground truth. And then I'm trying to communicate it to this behemoth, the army or whatever, the US government, who that doesn't understand that, right? So they're desperate to help this guy, but they're desperate to not pay attention to them. So I focus
Right.
my attention on that person and try to communicate back and say, less of this, more of that. And then the commanders that I would work with understood how to do that. And the rule for me was like, how do we do less and accomplish more? And every commander loved that because I'm teaching them what's going on in the town, and then they can manage their machine. And so, and here's another axiom I developed, and really I'm stealing it from the guy who taught it to me. But there was this Afghan, he was a holy man, he was a warrior, and he was a governor, right? He'd been all of these things. So he held a lot of weight in the area that he governed. And he said, Pete, there's only room for one sword in the scabbard. So which of us is the sword? You, me, or the commander? Not me, but the governor. Is the governor the sword? So I asked the commander, and I said, "Here's what he wants to know." And then the commander, like a boss, goes, "Then he's the sword. How do we help him?"
Okay.
And we got out of
Wow.
his way. So that doesn't happen normally, right? It doesn't happen that a commander said he's the boss, whatever he wants. I mean, and we can all say that, but he did it and he acted and he followed up on that whole thing. So it became real for the governor. And guess what the governor did? He started governing more. He got more involved. So that's a spy win that you're not going to read about in a comic book or see in a movie, but it was essential to advancing that area. Now flash forward a year later, and the whole place is gone to hell because these wins are temporary. But that is what I do: is I try to bridge that gap between wildly different things. So I don't worry about what hand gesture I use. I go in and I say, I'm from California. And I always use this example, and I'll shut up here in a second, I swear. But uh, I know that Arabs primarily don't eat with their left hand, and I'm ambidextrous, so I often eat with my left hand. And so I'll say to them, I understand that you guys don't eat with your left hand, but I do. What do you think? And they go, "Ah, Pete, come on, you precious little baby. We know you're from California. You've told us. We know you're not Islamic. We know you're not an Arab. You can eat however you want. We can take it." And so, and I'm making a bit of an exaggeration with this, but that's the whole point. Like, it's not my job to understand all their cultural norms. It's my job to
Mhm.
allow them to teach me. And
Yeah.
then I can say, oh, I see. And then here's how we
Build the
do it.
trust
And
that
now we're
way.
exchanging relevance. Yes, I want to build trust at every opportunity I can.
Well, let's dive into your tracks now and get started. We got track one. This is INXS, Don't Change.
Yeah, I love it. I used to have a paper route, and right when my musical cool brain was kicking into gear, I'm 12, I'm 13 years old, and all this amazing new music is coming out. The new wave thing was coming, and I would steal my dad's Walkman and put it on while I delivered newspapers. This was like a new thing that no one really did this kind of stuff. So INXS just stuck with me, and I had my own money and I could buy my own cassettes. And so I bought Shabu Shaba. And
Mm-hmm.
I just have always, I think about that time, and it's misty and it's nostalgic and all that, but it just, it kind of represents for me, this song, that album represents to me kind of like my emergence into the world of adulthood and music. And I was making my own choices, purchasing my own things. And it's just a powerful memory for me of what it's like to start to grow up.
This song in particular, I remember this album, and I had a friend who had the cassette, and she shared it with me, and I made a copy of it, of course. Sorry, but it was again in that turning point for me with music that just kind of opened this, because I was used to stuff on the radio, was used to stuff that maybe friends in school had, and we were all kind of into that. And then there was now this new door, and I think I got into punk and all this kind of new wave music at around the
Yes.
same time. So some of the punk was older that I had to go back to, but it was a lot of new music that was happening. And then when MTV came out, you would see the videos of these bands and stuff. But I remember this song in particular by INXS was one of the first that really kind of grabbed me. Now, I don't know if I might be the last person in the world that knew this, but there's a fun fact that I found out about, that Bruce Springsteen covered this song.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
There's
okay.
been
All
other
right. I can kind
covers.
of see
I
that.
think Limp
Yeah.
Bizkit and tens of other bands that you might assume
Mm,
would cover it, but I wasn't. I guess somebody like Bruce, I wouldn't think would be covering this, but so that was pretty.
yeah.
Um,
It's INXS is an underappreciated band. Look, the music is great, but Michael Hutchence and what he did, he's one of the greatest frontmen ever. He just smoldered, and he had the words. And how could women? People don't remember because he's been dead for such a long time now, but women loved that dude. And then he started singing, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And it was
yeah.
over, right? Just his appearance. He had it. He had everything except for longevity.
Well, I did share on another guest podcast who did. This is the third time In Excess has come up. Different songs though. that I had an experience with Michael Hutchinson in London, where I lived in this neighborhood. There was a recording studio, and I guess I was just brought back, I think, from the States when I went on a visit home, some rollerblades. Stuff these things in my suitcase, and they were still fairly, it wasn't something typical in England to be, doing rollerblades. So I'm
Right.
trying to maneuver on these rollerblades on the streets, near in my neighborhood in London. And as I'm going down this road on the sidewalk, he comes out of this studio and is about to jump into a taxi cab. And I almost like plow into him. And then I realize
Wow.
who it is. Like, oh, that's Michael Hutchinson. And I get out of his way and he gets out of my way. And then he jumps into the taxi and I still stay on foot, don't fall, and then carry on trying to, rollerblade.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good experience for me, and I didn't continue with rollerblades. But the point was, just
Yeah.
bumping into somebody. You in London, you would see so many artists and famous people kind of in random places, and just so happened
Yeah.
this neighborhood was where, just out of some strange coincidence, and that was
Yeah.
probably 6 months to 8 months before he died.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. And it's sort of like Santa Monica in LA, or maybe in Beverly Hills, where just going to the coffee shop, you're going to see famous people, because
Yeah,
they still go to the grocery, even if they have an assistant, they still go to the grocery store, and so
yeah.
if you go to the Hollywood Ralph's, you're going to see John Malkovich in the middle of the night because he wants some burritos, and so he just goes down, and you know that just happens. And so you're right. So like if you happen across Michael Hutchins, of course you did. And also you might do it in Malibu. You might go down to Duke's and be like, that's Michael Hutchins sitting over there. And so
Yeah.
yeah, these things happen in these world-class cities where talent pulls up because that's where they work. And obviously the conditions are nice in Southern California for living in general.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the Break It Down show. Like, how did you get started? What was kind of the inspiration for creating the show?
Yeah, when I got back from going to war, at least it ended up being the end of it, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be. But I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to, maybe write a book and do something. And my buddy had a community radio show, and so I sort of just jumped in, and we clicked at doing that. And so we started going crazy, and the show was doing really well. But because it was community radio, we got called up to the big house, and they're like, "What you guys are doing is too big for us. You have to go do something bigger. We're not going to allow you to have your show anymore. We're going to find someone who's community based, and we want them to do this because that's what this is for. You guys need to go do something bigger." And so they fired us in the most wonderful way possible. And so that show became the Break It Down show, and the journey it's incredible. And like I know you're sort of just getting started, but you already see the value in getting to meet me and the next person and the next person, and
Yeah.
all of the exchange that happens. People want to always know how to monetize their show. Like, no, no, find what's valuable and just amplify it and trade it. And if you trade and amplify value, your life will enrich, the other person's life will enrich, and all of a sudden there's so much richness in being around you. Money will flow. I'm not acting like I got a bunch of money because I don't, but money will come in. It'll flow in, and you'd be like, "Where did that check come from?" Oh, 5 years ago, you introduced these two guys, and they wanted to thank you, and so they gave you. Oh my God,
Wow.
how did this happen? Right. And so the show, by telling stories and connecting people, I've got this powerful networking machine that fills my life full of wonderful, wonderful experiences. It's marvelous to have something like this. And the hilarious part is like if I go on X, someone will be like, "Oh, you're just a podcaster." And I'm like, if you had any idea, if you'd even bothered to look, but you didn't, and you want to mock me? Oh, come on. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely smiling. My show is so magical. It's so wonderful. So thanks for asking about it and let me talk about it because I love to talk about my show.
No, no, it's great. And it's impressive how many, how long in the dedication you put into it. But I mean, again, 2000 episodes is a lot of, with
Yeah.
guests, trying to get 2000 guests. I can imagine this is, there's so much that comes into it, but
Yeah.
there's got to be so many changes in stories that you've been able to experience through these guests and what they've shared with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had people have these horrible life things happen to him. A guy that I know, I'm thinking about him now, his name's Jason Schechterly. He was a cop in Phoenix, and he got rear-ended at high speed. He was stopped at a red light, and it lit his car on fire, and he was trapped in his car. And so the fire department actually happened to be a fire truck right there at his accident by some miracle. And so they haul him out, and they think it's a recovery because no way someone survives that. He had fourth degree burns, right? And maybe he even had some fifth, but either way, you're not supposed to even survive. The amount of burns he had from third degree, you're not supposed to. But he had fourth degree burns, and
Ooh.
pretty quick you become something that was cooked rather than a human. And he said he smelled like charcoal when they pulled him out. And he's like, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm such a better person now. I know so much more about life. And he speaks professionally. If you can't take some lessons from that and to get some perspective, it's easy to look at them like, oh, in this economy. People say that every year of everyone's life. Oh, this economy, this and that. If you have a different point of view and you can see the positive things, the opportunities that we all have, look where you live, look where I live, what wonderful things. And that's what gets unlocked when you get to talk to all these people with all this wisdom. You start to realize, of course, there's hard things. Of course, everybody has things. Everybody has tragedies. Every family is going to experience sudden death, and nobody gets away from that. But look at all of the wonderful things around you, and that's what comes out of this show. Is it's just always something new, and getting to talk to you guys now, and getting big at becoming a guest. I still get so much investment back into my well-being and my happiness, and I do my best to spread that around because there's plenty of it. There's plenty
Yeah,
of good things. There's plenty of love. You never run out of love. You just lean on it and use it, and it always refills. Always.
I love that. Um, let's go to track two. This
Okay.
is Toccata and Fugue in D minor,
Right.
Johann Sebastian Bach. Now, I know it
Right.
from Fantasia with Disney, but I assume there's
Sure.
got to be more in
Yeah.
to you.
Just that opening hook. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. Oh my God. Right. And you can just, that can become disco. And it did. You just take that hook and just do it again and again and again. It's amazing that music that's hundreds of years old
Mm,
can still move people. So back when J.S. Bach wrote it, I don't know, in the 1600s, was that when it was? 1700, early? A long
1700, I think.
time ago. But my dad had a degree in sacred music, and at our church, he was one of the guys that kind of filled in for the organ player, and we were going to buy a pipe organ for that church. And so he was the one guy that knew about that kind of thing. And so he went on this tour of America looking at pipe organs to help the church make an educated decision about it. And so he grabbed me, and my as much as my dad wasn't a great dad a lot of times, he also had these things that he did that were very important and very good dad things. And so much as like I'll say, oh, my dad was a problem growing up, there's a time when he got it right, and he took me on this journey with him to go to all these places, and he taught me all about pipe organs. And it was in a time when I was super impressionable, and so I began to appreciate and love organ music. And then he would play these songs on his organ in the house. He didn't have pipe organ, but he had a giant organ in the house. And it just represents like these things that were buried deep into my being that I turn out. I love symphony now. I love opera. These are things that are not like always easy for young people, but I've seasoned into this person that has a deep appreciation for the pipe organ, for symphony, for orchestra, for quartet, all these things. And I love all kinds of music, but you put me in a symphony hall for 90 minutes with a cellist playing something, I go somewhere else. And I have the ability to just leave that auditorium based upon this music that was written 100, 200, 200, 300 years ago. It's an amazing endeavor to be able to go out and listen to this kind of music. You are physically moved by the pipe organ. I know I'm getting all excited
Yeah.
about pipe organing, but I truly love it. And so when you feel that machine just brrr, there's no amplifier, like there's no electronic amplifier. It's just air moving through pipes, and so it resonates, and you're just like, oh my God, and this big beastly thing. You put a violin next to it, and they can play together. This behemoth, this gorilla, and this mouse, and they
Yeah.
make this most wonderful music. So I love it. I love Bach. I love all of it. Chopin, Haydn, all those guys. They're all amazing to me, and they're just as relevant today as they were. Now, some of it's popularity, but they're just as relevant today as they were 150, 200 years ago.
Now, do you feel like you've got a trained ear in pipe organs? Like, for instance, if you hear a piece with a pipe organ, do you kind of know what type maybe that one is, or are there? Because I
Ah,
imagine there's different. Like when you went with your dad, there's different ones that you were
yeah.
looking at.
Uh, what I can hear that other people probably can't is I can hear it breathing, because there's air going over across the pipes, and so there's like this musical hiss that's in there. And so like if you played a synthesizer, I might not be able to tell, but I could probably go, oh, that's not real. Like
Hmm.
you could hear the realness, the aliveness of a pipe organ if you get kind of up to speed on it. So there's certain pieces I like on pipe organ, but it's all the ones that have like the big bass notes because the when those big bass pipes start blowing, man, it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's crazy how powerful it is.
I think a really inexpensive option to do, and if you're traveling and you're somewhere in a big city, possibly during December, probably close to Christmas time or something like that, is to be able to go into some church. And you can do this where it's very inexpensive, but you can hear sometimes when they're practicing, or there may be a choir that's going and they have the organ behind it with some stuff. And we've
Yeah.
snuck in a few times on holiday when we've been traveling and just go, stop into some place and you get hear them practicing, or like a concert that might cost you $5 or something, very inexpensive. And it's been
Yeah.
pretty incredible.
Yeah, it
Um,
is incredible. Yeah, it is.
let's go to
Go
track
ahead.
three.
Okay, track three.
This is the Beatles, and an interesting choice. Now, I always say this when I with a map, like a group that's so vast and so big, when certain selections, because it's obviously not an obvious one, and this is actually
Yeah.
one of my favorites off this album. But I'm very curious now because it is such a unique song, and not probably that anybody would have thought or guessed that you picked. But it's the two
Yeah.
two of us from Let It Be.
Yeah. It's such a great song, and obviously it's not everybody's favorite song, but how do you not love this song? And I guess what the song represents for me was, it was again like this coming of age time where you have your best friends and you go out and you ride bikes together, or we live right by an emerging construction site, so we could just go explore those construction sites and
Mm,
just go have this youth experience that Gen X kids got to have, where the parents are like, "We'll see you later. Get the hell out of the house."
yeah.
And so we would just go do all these things. You light firecrackers off, you throw rocks at things, all that kind of stuff. And so just less about the Beatles and more about the vibe of like just the two of us. We're out there, we're doing these things, having these adventures. We don't have any money, but it doesn't really matter, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it represents for me. And it always takes me back to that time. And I think about it, and it just makes me happy. And the song was happy. And then it translates into like a relationship, with some, like I have a special someone, you have a special someone, and it's like just the two, and whether you can just change the words to the modern vibe of who you are. So me and my special someone, walking down the street, doesn't matter anything else. Like I just want to be with her and around her, I just want to touch her, while we're having tea or something. So yeah, that's what it represents, is just the power of just the two of us. And that's all I really need.
It's a really cool song, and I think the whole connection between Lennon and McCartney there was special, and it actually, you see that there was this big bond between them for so long, and I think,
Yeah.
McCartney, I think, wrote most of the lyrics to it, which I think was a list initially about Linda, but then obviously it's the link between him and John. But I
Yeah.
love the song and this kind of cheeky intro by John Lennon when he was talking about Charles
Right.
Hawtrey, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he used to do these films in the UK in the 60s, I think 50s and 60s, called Carry On films. So he was famous actor for these kind of slapstick kind of they're called carry on films, but that's what he is, Charles Hawtrey is famous for. And then putting this kind of where Doris gets her oats, which I think is a metaphor for something about Doris getting lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that version because it's those guys in the middle of really the end, but still just so creatively, cosmically sparked, and there is all this genius in there, and John can throw this just joking thing reference out that we all can go dissect. I mean, think about that. Like he wasn't worried about anybody ever hearing that. He's just hanging out with his boys and entertaining them as they all
Yeah.
entertained each other as they all broke up. And it's just like this crazy vibe. But yeah, I in particular I love that because of the background. It's not just the song. It's them being together probably for the last time. And I love all of this context that goes into that song. It's wonderful.
Pete, I got a question for you. When you've been in these combat zones, especially like Afghanistan or Iraq and such, um, what films would you say, if you've seen any that have done justice to possibly, what you've experienced or what the situation was like when you were there? What do because I think there's a lot of films that try to compel or, kind of portray this. I'm not sure. Sometimes the public aren't really familiar with what's good or bad or what it was really like.
Right. Yes. I'm trying to find the one that I really, some of them are good for small reasons, like War Machine. I think that's the one with Brad Pitt. There was this one moment where the general is talking to the Afghan leader, who was played by, gosh, I can't remember who it was, but it was someone famous. And he's like, "You don't understand because you guys don't take the time to understand us. You guys tell us what to do, but tell us we're in charge," right? And that's like, in that little exchange, it perfectly captured why we struggled to get this stuff right. And it's a great one. There's also one about I'm trying to look it up right now while we're talking. It's it's about this outpost, and they're kind of stuck in this self-fulfilling prophecy. And maybe it's called The Outpost. It's a fairly recent
Hmm.
movie, like maybe 3 years ago or so. And they really got the life on the side of a mountain, trying to live in a place where people are constantly trying to attack you and trying to figure out how to survive that. I've lived in that world. And if you don't have someone like me around, you can become very combative and create your own demise. I'm not casting blame on anybody. I'm not saying, but it's a very complex place where if the right scenario and the right people aren't together, it becomes even more lethal. And they have this horrific fight. Our highest military award is given out to some of these guys, and a lot of dudes died. I remember when that fight happened. I wasn't there, but you're always aware that that happened to other guys, and I'm in the same kind of places, right? And I'm leaving the camp, right? So it's that's as real to me. Is it called the
And
Outpost? I
you're in
think it's called the
civilian
Outpost.
clothes, right? You're in casual, just like.
Primarily, yeah, primarily. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could wear uniforms, but I typically didn't because of the nature of my role. I wanted to be
Right.
different. I didn't want to be a military guy, even though I was. And in that case, I was with the Army. I was sworn in Army guy, but I wasn't a regular soldier. It was more like a legal thing. So I belonged to the Department of the Army, but my role was in a civilian capacity. Still the same job code though, so it's just a different organization.
Did
And
you have dog
I
tags?
could did I have dog tags? I suppose I might have. I don't remember. I didn't really wear them out very much because, again, I was trying to make a clear link between me and the soldiers. So I didn't have an actual commander. I still have to do what the commander says, but he doesn't have the same kind of authority over me because my boss is somebody else, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a complex thing. It doesn't really matter. I went out with soldiers every day and did soldier stuff, but my job is different than theirs. My job is to relate to people so that we can deflate the tension in the area. And so a place like the Outpost, they didn't have the ability to do that, and the enemy was had the upper hand and weren't going to give it away easily. And so yeah, these
Right.
things are real, and it's that movie is a very good example of how problematic that fight was. And if you're in the wrong area at the wrong time, there's just no avoiding the fight. There's not. It's going to come to you no matter what.
Have you seen any films that has kind of your role? So, like, the person in there that's trying to be like you were. Or are there any TV shows that tried to portray you in a way, like, that kind of.
I don't. I don't know that has happened. If I think of something, I'll say it, but I don't. Nothing jumps into my mind where I've seen my role. And look, I'm not James Bond, right? That's a fantasy. But there's a lot of James Bond things that I do. I might go play poker, and that might break through and get me to the next step in the game. So, and I don't know that it would be particularly interesting. Not that what I did wasn't interesting, but it's hard to depict on film because there's just a lot of talking, and
Mhm.
watching me talk for 2 hours wouldn't tell you the story. So I'm sure there's a way to tell it, but there would be so many compromises. It wouldn't be the same because it's very slow, deliberate work, and it's fraught with errors. And somehow on the other end, you're like, I made it across this time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just it's a crazy thing. I'm in as much peril in different ways on an American camp as I am out in the villages, right? How do you depict that? You know, where there's all this intrigue and skullduggery, people trying to undermine me because a lot of times I have bad news. Because guess what? When you're losing, you have to know about it, and if you don't know, commander can't fix it. And so it's a lot of intrigue on both sides of the equation.
And you have to build trust on both sides, right?
For sure. Yeah. Trust. And more importantly than trust on the American side, because they'll give that faster, it's relevance. Am I relevant to the command? Am I giving his staff information that allows them to improve their performance?
Right,
Right? Because
right,
I've
right.
got 4 tasks: help the commander win more, help the commander lose less, help the enemy lose more, help the enemy lose less, or lose more and win less. Right? Those are my 4 tasks, really. And if I can get all those, well, all those things have masters above them that I have to satisfy these things. Otherwise, the gate won't open for that one value. And so if I'm just showing you threat profile, you're missing all the rest of the fight that's going on. And so it's a very challenging dance. And again, I don't know how you tell that in a movie. There's a way, but I just can't think of it off the top of my head right now.
Yeah. Let's get to track 4. This
Okay.
is the third time we've had this group on the podcast, the Smiths, with What Difference Does
Yes.
It Make?
Yeah. You know, the I found the Smiths not late in terms of like, look, they're still around with incredible music. They're not playing it anymore, but I found them in about, I think it was 83. And a lot of my friends are like, where you been? Everybody knows about the Smiths. And I was like, man, I felt so bad that I wasn't cool. It turned out I was way early. But you know, when you're on the edge of this stuff and you're finding these new bands and you know, and you'll appreciate this. We would, some of us, to get ahead, we would get shortwave radios and listen to England and like listen to what was being played there, like all the Manchester stuff, right? And so you could get ahead, but boy, it was a lot of work. You got to go outside in the tent so your mom doesn't get mad if you're listening to the radio in the middle of the night. You know, do all these kind of crazy steps to find out stuff. But I found the Smiths, and like everybody else, it resonated with me, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this music? It's incredible. Who is this Morrissey guy? What does it even mean? And you couldn't just look up internet lyrics on the internet back then. You had to listen. You had to try to find the lyrics written down somewhere. You had to know what song it was because the radio guy may not even say it. You know, they may just play it and be
Yeah.
like, I played a song by the Smiths. So there's all this discovery that happened on your own terms or with your own friend, or you go to Tower, you're like, what was that song that the Smiths play? You know, and there's magic in that, but it's kind of also the end of my youth, like that. I'm going to transition into becoming an adult soon, so as I'm learning all this thing, I'm learning about girls, I'm learning about work, I'm learning about school, I'm doing all these things, and it's all like I'm leaving my youth behind in this too. And so you get like this kind of nihilistic approach that Morrissey had to lyrics. He's always killing people off and you know has all this negativity in his music. And so you realize that there is this other side of things. And what 15-year-old isn't reading Nietzsche and going, yeah, yeah, you know, like and vibing with it. So he's kind of like for at least for Gen X for me, he's kind of like our Nietzsche, where you hear these things and you're like, oh my gosh, you hadn't really thought about that. And so that's what this song represents to me, is just kind of like the conclusion of that part of my evolution. Like I'm never going to be that kid again. I'm going to be this deeper person who is exposed to music, who does go outside of his house. And even when I was a kid, I would leave my house and go to other people's homes. I would do a lot of this spy work. I didn't know, it wasn't a design or anything, but I was very comfortable going to uncomfortable places. I'd go play basketball in Oakland all the time, or Richmond, all these places that a white kid shouldn't be going to, like in theory. But it turns out if you go there and you're just you, yeah, you're gonna have to stand up for yourself. Yeah, you might get into some fights, but the thing is that you can relate to these people. And so all of this is all coming to the fore, and I've got this world-class music kind of teaching me. And more importantly than anything else, I gotta mention this. I left it as a Peel session because that was another academy where you could learn about incredible music from this guy that's like, check out this band. And then you look at his list of bands,
Mm.
oh my God, you know? And so you could always go to the Peel session recordings and discover things that were new and have your mind blown by Gang of Four. You're like, what's a Gang of Four? I don't even know what that is, but you buy that album and all of a sudden you just get this different experience. You're exploring cultural differences, and oh man, I just love it. I love the Smiths. I love what they brought to me when I was right when I needed it. A way to kind of wrap all this stuff up.
Yeah, and it's a great. I mean, this Hatful of Hollow is this album, which is mostly, I think, predominantly Peel sessions recordings.
Hmm.
And John Peel was just this icon for music from the UK, but I think he's been global in his reach in terms of people
Yeah.
that have heard his, when he gives it an approval, when he did, he's passed now, but when he gave
Right.
an approval of a band, that was almost like more bestowing than what being knighted as in the UK. And so John Peel's kind of blessing was such a incredible, and it's funny because one
Yeah.
of his favorite bands was a band called The Fall. I don't know if you've ever heard of The Fall.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
And
course. Yeah.
they were never as popular as Depeche Mode, The Cure, The Smiths, or anything like that. But they were so kind of special. This band from Manchester, again, same
Yeah.
some of the bands up there, and that was John Peel's one of his favorite bands. So it's so
Yeah.
interesting how he had such a great ear for music and the stuff he did. But it's a great
Yeah.
story how you've linked to, because growing up doing some of the similar stuff. I think we're probably maybe closer age. um just being able to have that freedom, as you mentioned. You leave
Yeah.
in the summertime. I would go be playing baseball, doing something all day, maybe go to somebody's house for lunch, come back to mine. Didn't people, my parents were working, so there was never really any work. Like, you were just
Right.
home alone, and then you'd go out, and then
Yeah.
you'd be coming back when it gets dark, and then everybody's home, and then you eat, and nobody cared, nobody worried. It's not like you're gonna get into a van with somebody, but you had
Right.
so much freedom, and people,
Yeah.
it was a different time, of course, but you know
Yeah, yeah, that's it. I mean, and I found so much music then, and it took me away from what a lot of people thought was popular, because there was a lot of diversity in our music. You look at the top 20 or top 30, and you're like, oh my God, how many different styles of music were in there, So you could be on a completely different journey than your friends. Maybe you come back around like I was way late on Prince, right? Because he wasn't in my sweet spot. I was aware that it was great, but I couldn't be bothered because I had the Smiths, I had the Cure, I had U2, all these bands that are going supernova at the same time. And so I didn't have time for the glamorous life. I like them girls, but I wanted to explore the other world, and there was a coolness factor in each of them, and I wasn't that kind of cool. I was this kind of cool. And that's all right. There was play. There also then there's the Van Halen kids, It's like totally different group. The punks and the new wave kids are kind of overlap a lot, and so I have a lot of friends that were in that world who went on to do amazing things. It's all just a fascinating world that I can now hop because of when by being like I'm 55. When I grew up in the 80s, it was just anything was possible. Women, female acts, women bands were normal, and so all of that has grown and given me this very broad array of things that I enjoy in the music world.
I think it's also, when you hear some of the artists that you like and you're kind of in their camp, you're like, no, I'm with these bands. These are my bands. These are my tribe.
Yeah.
And then you kind of look in. I remember hearing, using the Smiths as an example, Johnny Marr, the guitarist. He was talking about towards the end of before they broke up, the bands he was listening to. So stuff like, or maybe it was just after. So hip hop. He had Van Halen, obviously he liked. There was maybe even Fleetwood Mac, and I think De La Soul was one of these bands that he really liked. That was kind of new,
Sure.
and I'm just like, and you would think maybe the legacy of kind of Bowie and Bolan, T-Rex or Velvet Underground and all of that, but then when you start kind of exploring, well, he likes this, and then of course he likes that, and then he was into Chic, or because I know that it's the guy from Chic who recorded some stuff with him, and he did some stuff with him. It's just, I think as you get older, you realize how stuff bleeds over. There's not this like,
Yeah.
this is our tribe, this is your tribe, and we have different gangs. I
Right.
think there's so much that music is, it can cross kind of borders and boundaries where you don't realize when you're really young, because you're finding
Nile
yourself.
Rodgers is so
Nile Rodgers, that's
influential.
him.
Whoever he produces, you're like, that's Nile Rodgers in that album. I don't know
Yeah.
how I know that, but I know it. And then you look it up, you're like, yep. And everybody runs to him. It's just like when the Chili Peppers went to George Clinton and did an album with him, and they covered Sly Stone. Yeah, they're a funk band, but then they went back to their funk roots and got their funk dads to teach them about funk. And
Yeah.
and it changed them from being this kind of party punk surf band to this is way early, right? Then into something bigger that filled stadiums because they found and were the tent pole holder for a while in the biggest form of popular funk. There's only so many bands that could still even fill stadiums, and they're still one of those bands. It's amazing that crossing of what you need. And when it works, boy, does it ever work. Sometimes it doesn't work, but like, hey, I did my country album. And you're like, yeah, thanks. Not that great, but that's all right. But yeah, now Rogers though, boy, that guy hits him out of the park all the time. He's
Yeah.
incredible.
We get to track 5. This is a great song and a great artist, Elvis
Yeah.
Costello and the Attractions. This is early Elvis Costello with a song called Shipbuilding.
Yeah. It's incredible that song, and how it links back to this is like a transition into more of my professional life. And in some ways, because I'm young and stupid, I want there to be a war. And I'm like, man, there's not even going to be a war. Like, this is how crazy you are when you're in the army. You're like, well, what the hell's the point of being here if I'm not going to go out and do something to include die for my country? Is it worth it? You're like, oh man, was it worth it? I don't think I'll ever answer that question because a lot of it wasn't worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go and you do these things. Why are we here? What are we doing? Why aren't we doing it like we mean it? So much of like my work was seeing us fail. And if it was real, why didn't we take it serious? Why did we train so hard for the things that weren't relevant to what we were doing?
Yeah.
Man, is it just for, coat and shoes for the wife and a bicycle on your son's birthday? Is that what it's for? I'm using lyrics to illustrate the point here, but yeah, I made a lot of money, but what if I was home with my daughter and I helped raise her instead of being gone all the time? Was that worth it? And man, and so and Elvis's version is not even the big one if you leave America. Like it's I can't remember his name right now, but I think it's a Scottish guy. And
Robert
there's
Wyatt.
pain. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's so much pain in that version of it. That it's the song. I found the song when I was young, right? But then later on, it wasn't just the song that I liked. I grew into the meaning of that song
Yeah.
and I understood it. And I was like, oh my gosh, the rumor that they're going to be building this shit. Oh no, that's right. That's all this stuff. Like right now, like all the top generals are in a meeting with the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, right now, and everybody's worried about what's going to come out of it, and this sort of talks about that. Like, what are we going to be doing here? Are we
Right.
are we digging for a fight? Are we just evolving? Whatever it is, shipbuilding, man, it speaks to a lot of it. And so it's this real transition song for me from a song from an artist that I loved, and I would put his albums on as much as I put anybody else's albums on, and I would just play it over and over and over again because I don't want to get up. I just want to get up and move the head of the record player and be like, all right, go back down, and then chill out and read or whatever I was going to do. But that music is just deep in me, and then it turned out it actually meant something once that part of my adult brain turned on.
From what I understand, he wrote it during the Falklands War
Right.
time. It is so 1982 in the UK and Argentina, and so I mean I think you can still, like you said, some of the lyrics you were just sharing, you can relate those to today. How is
Yeah.
what you're doing? Is it worth it? And then what's the impact that it's going to do back home? Is this like, are there being stuff creating jobs for something
Mhm.
that's also creating something else? You know,
Yeah.
killing,
Yeah.
etc. So I don't want to
I,
get
well, I remember when the Falkland Wars, I was excited because I was a kid and I was 12 or 13 when it was going on. And I was like, it's so cool that they have a war. Finally, there's a war. Because in my mind, I had no idea Vietnam really just ended 10 years before, and not even that really. And so I didn't have any reference for that. And I was excited. There was something exciting going on, because you're dumb when you're a dude and you're young. You're like, yeah, there's a war. It's going to be awesome. And it isn't awesome. It's
no.
terrible, but you don't know. And then the other thing I have to mention is Chet Baker plays on this thing, and if most everybody misses Chet Baker's career, I certainly did too. But as I grew older and after Chet had died, I'm like, look at what this man did with this thing, and Elvis's creative spirit to say, hey, I'd love to have you play on this thing, right? Just he's nervous asking Chet Baker, right? Because he had an appreciation for who he was and what he did. And then Chet's like, yeah, sure. He's like, what do you want to pay? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I'll pay you double scale. Just like just excited to pay him. And then they don't just hope he shows up because he was messed up as a person and addicted and everything else. But then he lays down that track and really with no, just let me hear the song. Okay. And then just throws it down. And that genius is in there. And so if you don't appreciate what that is, the courage of Elvis to say, will you please do this? And then don't get in his way. Just let genius be genius. Man, if we could all do more of that, if we can let people be great instead of telling them how to be great, there's some real value in that. So there's a lot I love about this song. It's always rich for me. And then I find out that decades later, I found out that this wonderful version from who was it? I never remember his name. What's his name?
Robert Wyatt.
Yeah. Boy, the pain in his voice, he changes that song. And I can see why people love it because it's powerful.
I was listening to I was living in England in London at the time, and I remember recording on the off the radio. It was on BBC with David Bowie for his 50th birthday. So imagine this has got to be at least from my age 54. So it's 25 odd years ago when I heard this, and I remember recording it. And he was talking about what songs that he loves at the moment. What song is like his song, and he said Shipbuilding, but the Robert Wyatt version in particular. And I was like, I got to hear his version, like, because I didn't know his version. I knew Elvis Costello's version and stuff, but I was like, okay, what is this? I need to, and it just like completely just turned the dial for me so that I could. And then later, a couple of years later, I did find it and get a copy of it, and it's incredible. So check it out.
Yeah, for sure. And not even the big song from that album. I mean, I'm trying to look it up now to remember everything. It doesn't really matter. The the there's so much greatness in Elvis Costello's work back then. He's absolutely, as much as he's cool and everything else, he's underappreciated for what he has brought us because he is fantastic in his writing and his audiobooks, everything. If you at all like Elvis Costello, dig deeper into his catalog because there's so much great work there. He really is an artist's artist, and I love that about him.
I've never seen him live, but I actually not bumped into him, but I walked past him in
Did you rollerblade
Chicago.
into him?
Yeah, I wasn't rollerblading this time, but I actually walked right past him, and I was like, he was coming towards me, and I was like, that's Elvis Costello. I didn't bother him or stop him or anything, but I just kind of walked past him. This was in Chicago when I lived there in like 2004, 2005. And I was just like, he might have been in town doing a concert or something. I don't know. Because, I mean, obviously, Chicago gets a lot of great artists to play in town.
For
And I was
sure.
just like, wow, he's a dude. But I didn't want to bother him while he's just kind of strolling. And you see not as much as like LA or London, but you see sometimes some people because they're not going to feel like they're going to get pressured in Chicago, somewhere like that. It's a big city, it's got a lot of
Yeah.
music city, but they can kind of stroll around, people leave them alone and stuff. Uh, I did see Paul McCartney coming into a car leaving a Whole Foods as I was going into Whole Foods in Chicago, and he was getting in the
Yeah.
car with one of his ex-wives at the time. I think after Linda, this is like in the same time, almost the same time frame. And again,
Yeah.
I didn't bother. I didn't try to stop him. Be like, "Oh my God,
Mhm.
Paul!" So,
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy that bugs the guy. He's like, he's just coming out of Whole Foods. I got to leave him
yeah,
alone. Right?
what you get?
Yeah. Yeah. But you're right. Chicago has a great music scene. Like San Francisco's music scene has totally died. All the theaters are gone. All the clubs are gone. It's all
No,
closed down. If you're a big enough act to sell seats, you can still perform there, but you're going to go other places. But Chicago still has a good bit of that. I saw Henry Rollins band come into town about a year or two before you got there, and they recorded a whole live album at the Metro. And I went to both. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to go see Henry Rollins, and it was snowing like you shouldn't drive. And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm gonna risk it to see Hank because man, he takes his music, and we're not talking about Hank specifically, so I'll shut up about this in a second. But he takes his hand and he bear paws you back to the back wall, and you have to deal with him. He won't let you get away from it. And his drummer was a guy named Jason McEnroth, and I was so impressed by him that when we first started to break it down, so I got to find that guy. I got to get him on the show. I want to talk to him. And thank goodness we did, because I believe we had the last interview that he did before he passed away. He died of prostate cancer. And
Oh
so he
wow.
was the first guy that we had on the show that had died. And he was, yeah, he's a tiny bit older than me. And because of his drumming background and where he grew up, my co-host John is like, I know all these people. I know that drum corps. So there was this affinity by just connecting each other. And this goes back to the value of the show. So John and Jason connect in a way that was powerful and taught us both that this world is a whole lot smaller if we allow it to be. And what a treat to get a chance to talk to Jason. And then years later, after he died, as his kids grew up, they're like, "Hey, I found this interview with my dad. Thank you so much for doing this." Because they were young enough that they didn't have enough time to really know their dad. Of course, they knew him, but this version of their dad, they never got to see because he was sick and then he died. So it's
Wow, that's
incredible.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's get to track 6.
Okay.
This is a great band, the Style
Yeah.
Council, Paul Weller. But this is with Tracy Thorn from Everything But the
Yeah.
Girl, called the Paris Match, which again is a great title. And I'm trying to do, I was like, why did they call it the Paris Match? But we can go into that after. But tell me about this song.
Well, the other funny thing is if you found this song in England and they were on top of the pops, it's the Perry match. Like, and I'm like, oh, that's right. They say Perry sometimes there instead of saying Paris like we do. And so even then, there's like this different cultural interest in this song. So it's just great. First off, it's if you were of the right age and of the right mindset, there was nothing cooler than the Style Council and finding their music and just the mix of things. So Paul Weller had gone from the Jam, this Hall of Fame grade band, and it's like, I'm done doing that. I want to sing about love. I want to sing about jazz songs. I want to explore. There's rap on his albums. There's all this crazy dance music. It's a total
R&B.
reinvention by somebody. And it's so rare to see these reinventions. The Jam was, I'll say, one of the biggest bands in the world. You got to make a big world, but like they mattered. They were important. And then he's like, yeah, I'm done with that. Before they were done, he's like, I'm done with that. And then he went and became not just maybe the biggest band in the world for a minute. And I'm talking the big world, not the US world. Still big in the US, but they were massive. And oh my God, to do that twice is amazing. And this song is so goddamn cool. And having Tracy Thorn come in and giving up his microphone to her, and then there's some singing in French and all this stuff. And then if you go to Paris and you've broken up with somebody, which happened to me, you're like, oh my God, this song really means something. And so,
Oh.
as you get more adult relationships, you have real feelings invested and you end up broken up and you end up in Paris afterwards, you're just like, oh my God, this is a place for walking around. So you put that on and it rains when you're walking around. And these songs that didn't mean as much, like Shipbuilding, as you begin to mature and understand relationships, this song just becomes something even bigger. And I speak a little bit of French, a little bit. Not, I'm not in any way conversant, but I could understand that a lot of what was written in that song, and it was just all of that stuff was cool, man. I want to put my cardigan on. I'm gonna go walk around in Paris and maybe smoke a clove cigarette and be a cliche, but it was when you don't know how cool can be, and then you find this music. Oh, and by the way, there's a lot of political stuff in this music, and you're forced to deal with that. And you're trying to understand what he's talking about, and because it's not our politics, it's their politics. You all of a sudden end up reading about British politics and social movements and all these things. And you're like, oh my God, there's a whole conversation going on. And so I love everything about the Style Council. Um, it just there's so much education in it. And the other thing I'll say about Style Council, and then I'll shut up about it. I almost picked this song. There was a song from one of their later albums. It was called "Diving," and I love when artists do this when they come back to a song and they sing it more past tense. They sing it in a minor chord, and it's more reflective. I love when bands do that because again, there's just so much more depth in the song when you sing it from a position of experience.
And the title Paris Match is also
Yeah.
a French kind of gossip magazine. I don't know if it's like Hello Magazine in the UK, or
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not the National Enquirer, but it's probably just a step
Yeah.
above sort of those gossip magazines. But it's kind of so there's that kind of twist, but then it was also the heartbreak, the songs, the lyrics as you listen to it.
Yeah.
She has such an interesting voice, though. I mean, I've seen Everything But the Girl before live, and I've listened to them from their early stuff that
Oh,
sounded a lot more jazzy, kind of alternative, and then they got a little bit more kind of drum and bass or techno.
yeah.
But still, her voice, and she's played on so many other records as well, and it's just kind of that unique sort of sound to it. And that
Yeah.
was true.
She's
You
great. I've
said,
had I had DC Lee on my show. I'm so excited I have to say that because I love her
"Oh,
and she just resonates so well. Everybody watching, she was in the Style Council. She actually married Paul Weller for a
yeah."
while. And yeah, so you get to know these people when you have a show, you know, like I haven't really tried to get Tracy Thorn, but I would love to talk to her because she was in one of the coolest bands ever. And she was just so, if you allowed her to be, she was just so wonderful. You know, if you never found her, that's great. Not too late. She's still around. Go listen to her stuff. But to see, I'm a little envious that you got to see everything but the girl live. I didn't have the good sense to go see them whenever they were around, or I was too busy. Who knows the hell I was doing? But what a cool thing to be able to go do.
If you haven't noticed that her partner husband, I think they're married, Ben Watt, he wrote a book because
Oh,
he was really ill. And I remember in the UK, and this book came out, and it was about his, because he had lost tons of weight. He used to be kind of a big guy, and then he was like super skinny. I'm like, what the hell has he been, like taking extra stuff? But no, he was sick, and he had this weird virus. And no doctor in any countries that he was traveling around could understand it. And I think it's called Patient. But if you
mm,
if you haven't heard of it or whatever, if you want an interesting read, check out Patient by Ben Watt, because it's
I
pretty
will.
incredible about his story of, and how he could drink lots of beer, but then there's certain foods he couldn't eat. It was a weird diet that he had to go under. And I'm curious to see where it is now, because I haven't followed him. Like, he's still alive, of course, but I don't know
Yeah.
what, in terms of his health, is how much, if he's still under this. But it was a interesting story.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah, I didn't know any of that. I would love to figure it out. Maybe even have Ben on the show too, because he's again, that's what we get to do. We get to talk to whoever we want, and they say yes. So why not, right? Why not reach out to Ben and have him on?
Yeah, well, I can imagine with Paul Weller, just some of the interviews, and I have a book that somebody written, a biography on him, and some of the stories he's got some incredible stories, and the
Yeah.
music and his
Yeah.
background, and you follow some of his new music he's been doing. I mean, he's got probably over 10, probably the most records he's done as solo than from his previous two,
For
style
sure.
council.
Yeah.
And I
And
just
I've seen
found
him
out,
live now too. It was great.
yeah,
He was great. Yeah. Go ahead.
I know. I saw him in San Diego, and I saw him in Chicago, and both
Mhm.
times he was just rocking. It was incredible. But I just
Yeah.
remembered, I saw recently a picture of Band Aid. When they did that whole video and the whole thing, and Style Council was in that. So Paul Weller's in there. He
Yeah.
actually sings a little. I didn't remember him being in it. I knew, some of the other bigger names, but I didn't realize that Paul Weller was in there as well.
Yeah. 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 It's crazy. And I think they played Live Aid. I think they played
Yeah,
Live Aid
they
too.
did.
And again, it's hard to stand out in that bill, but they when I say that they were one of the biggest bands in the world and like very, very top, they were massive. They were enormous. And their music is still in so many of the songs 100% relevant today. You can listen to it, you're like, this is, he's such an incredible songwriter. And his sense of melody and what's hip and rhythm it's just incredible. It's incredible.
When I first got to London, I remember meeting this girl some pub or something like that, and so we kind of started talking and become friends for a little while. And she invited me back to her town because she was outside of London. It was in Woking, which I didn't realize that's where Paul Weller is from.
Mm.
And then talking to her, and she tells me that she used to babysit for their kids. I guess the kids that DC Lee and him had together. And then I actually
Yeah.
saw DC Lee on stage in London with Guru, who's a rapper from Gangstar. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
He did this jazzmatazz thing or something. And so he had all these different artists, mostly like Soul to Soul and some other big name singers that kind of played on it. But DC Lee was on the record. And then she came on stage with him in London, because obviously she's based there. But what was it like having her on your show?
Ah, she's such a sweetheart. She's incredible. And she has no fear of anything. She's done it all, right? And so this is the funny thing about having a show is you can appreciate how powerful someone is in their home genre, whatever it is, like whether they are the expert on wellness or the expert on aging or whatever it is, and they are mostly invisible to the entire world, And when you get out of the way and let that person be the tower that they are in their industry, they just they're so wise within their world, and they look around and they say these things, like, oh my God, like this. So she's like that, where she'll say something and she's comfortable with where she's not great at stuff. And her not great is better than everybody else in the world, right? You know, in terms of singing and everything. But yeah, it's just asking her like what, you know, what kind of pieces would make her nervous and everything and what's important to her. And one of the things she said is she's like, I don't need to be famous. I have a wonderful family. I love my kids. I want to go on the road because I love my fans. But it's got to be within this little small window. Otherwise, it's not valuable to me and I won't do it.
Yeah.
And so like to hear her say that is a wonderful place for anybody to get to. Like we often just embrace and overwork and over throw too much passion into our job, right? Even if it's a career, and so we miss out on things. Like I'm at an age when people are retiring or looking directly ahead to retirement, and so many of them are saying like, I don't know what I'll do. Like I'll tell you what you do. You don't go back to work. You go
Yeah.
figure out how to make a rich life. And because they've worked so hard, and there's a lot of blessings in that, but they're struggling with what am I going to do next? Like you'll find something. Just keep trying. And trying is part of the journey. And so for her to say that I don't need to be famous. I don't need to have gold record. I don't care about that. I care about music that makes me happy, that I'm interested in doing, people that I want to perform with. That's what I care about. And that's what I want to support. That's what I want to listen to. Whatever DC leads into, I want to support and be into it because she has great taste.
Yeah. We get to track 7.
Yeah.
This is I mean, I don't know even know how to describe him because he's just amazing and incredible. But Jimi Hendrix with a song called Little Wing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that song and I put it in there because I wanted to change it up a little bit. But here's what amazes me about the first off, he changed all the rules to all the things. You know, what if six was nine? Well, he sang about that and he forced us to deal with different things. And yes, he is this monolith when it comes to playing the guitar, but also the words. I think there's 68 words in Little Wing. Go anybody try to write 68 words that communicate more than what Little Wing has in it. And then the notes that he plays along with it just it's I think that song is there's a lot of them, but I think that song is a masterpiece. Like if we have a musical Louvre, I would put that thing as one of the premier things. Like how can you do so much with so little? It's like Steinbeck when he writes. And I two things I know a lot about Steinbeck, but there's two lines that I remember, and I'm saying lines. These are just a couple of words each, but he's describing something and he says a star rattled sky. Well, I know what that looks like. Star rattled
Hmm.
sky. That's it. That's just that's nothing. It's so powerful. And then he talks about his flypaper youth. Like, yeah, man. And so this is that version of that where like Jimmy's like, I just need 68 words. And if it's not 68, it's not 80. Right? It's no words at all. And it's so powerful that when Stevie Ray Vaughan plays, he didn't even use the words. He just plays an instrumental and it does it. So now you put those two things together, supernova. Incredible.
I think when I was getting into punk and getting into some of the 80s music alternative, I also, in parallel was listening to some of the old, like The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, even going, as far as like the Kinks and some of these bands from the 60s or early 60s. And I just remember, you would try this, make those connections between current music back then and then the older stuff. And Jimi Hendrix, I mean, so many. Of course, he has his, more iconic songs that were, especially he's famous, and even some of his songs that he's done probably better versions than. Indeed, most people have agreed that his version of the Bob Dylan song is, better than Bob Dylan's version.
Right.
But I think in general, there's just electric, his just besides, I think people always identify his guitar playing, which I think is incredible, but they don't realize the singer and the lyricist that was behind that too, and some of the stuff that he came up with. And that gives him kind of the same credit that he should get for his guitar playing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was great with his arrangements too, like the Wind Cries Mary. You know, when he says that line, it's the bass that plays, not him. And he's got space for that because that's the right thing to do. His choices were just incredible because he's got plenty of time to do what he needs to do with his guitar. But yeah, he had a great sense for what was there. And if I think of all of the musicians who left too much money on the table, he might have left the most. Maybe Dwayne Allman because he was so young and
Mhm.
so impactful. But you know, like that's the list right there. Like these guys that just had so imagine as when I think about greatness, it's how much greatness can you amass? So if it's peaky like it was with Hendrix, we didn't get to see what else he had in his bag. And that other stuff is going to be incredible. Musicians don't get worse if they're still driven. They don't get worse as they get older. They get better. They
Yeah.
know when to do a certain thing. They make better choices. And we never even got to see that version of Jimi Hendrix. And so it's I have this funny thing that I did. I made this funny like a meme basically, and I took Donnie and Marie ice skating on their you know, when they would do that open, and I put Jimi Hendrix in this crazy ice skating type pose, and I put him in front of them, like, you know, that's the world. I wish we got to see that world where Jimi Hendrix goes on the Muppet Show, he goes on Donnie and Marie, and it has this evolution. Some of it's going to suck. Right? Did we need disco Jimi Hendrix? I mean, yes, but probably not, right? But the places he would have gone. Oh my gosh, he's just because he wasn't limited by the things that limited a lot of us. He just and he showed us that there's more stuff. And unfortunately, he and Jim Morrison, all the other guys that had this connection to that other thing that we don't have. Um, well, you know, I wanted more of it. And so Little Wing is just an incredible example of just if we can do, in our lives do anything that's as good as that, boy, you've done something special.
Yeah. Let's get to track 8. This is from the Unforgettable Fire album, which is one of the first that I really got into by them. This is U2, an incredible song called Bad.
Yeah. I specifically chose the Song of Surrender version of it. This goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about Paul Weller and that song Diving. This is the adult version of it. You know, they've looked back and it's more of a duet. And if you've ever had anybody who was trapped in addiction, who couldn't get better, you know, you're like, why don't you just quit? Of course I want to quit, but I can't. And of course I feel shame. And so this conversation went from this wonderful song that described, you know, kind of like a anthropologic view of like what Dublin looked like as drugs were kind of taking all these people out and all the damage that the wars had caused there. Okay, you got that, and that was powerful imagery, especially when they put video to it, and you're like, oh wow, this really was something big. Again, like I've got this dumb kid brain, and I can't see the world outside of my own little id-filled, you know, wonderland. You started to understand. Then Bono took it and he made it mature where you look back and you see that friend that you always grew up with that you love, but you never can have a real relationship with because he's trapped in that world of addiction. And everything you say is useless to that person because you can't help them. And yet you want to. And you both know that you can't be as connected as you want to be because of and that's what the song has in it, man. And so
Yeah.
they took this song that meant one thing and then they spherically blew it up so that it was just this bigger song that anybody who's dealt with that, whether you're the person who's addicted or you're the person who's a friend who's addicted, and you realize, yeah, that's how helpless you feel on both sides and how inevitable this is. And this is part of growing up and it's part of still loving somebody unconditionally. I love that person, but I don't need to be around them because they're hard to be around because they're addicted. And they also feel like crap on around because now they feel guilty and they feel shame. And I don't want to give anybody, yeah, all this stuff is in that song. It's amazing. It's an amazing transformation of something that was already one of the greatest songs they ever did, and now they have two versions of it, and they're totally different. And it's just it's a credit to U2 and Bono and their ability to do things, and again with guts and not caring what happens, and just they completely reinvented that song.
Do you, through your time in the military, was there a lot of soldiers that come back from some of these war zones and that you feel like were fall into this trap, especially maybe obviously PTSD is a big area, but I mean,
Sure.
turn into drugs to try to kind of switch off the noise or even kind of what they went through, you know, to cope with that?
Yeah, there's tons of it, and there's also this kind of a good number of people in the military self-select in because they don't have a lot of personal value, right? And I can say this to someone in that party where I'm like, yeah, I don't matter here. You know, like I've been taught that I'm not relevant. You know, I had to have a someone I've known for decades who has always been a bit of a mentor to me. He said, you know, Pete, you deserve to be loved, and it hit me in a way that it wouldn't have worked 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier because I would have thought obviously people love me, and but did I believe it? And oh, it changed everything. In that moment, I just, I grew, and they were powerful words. And so there's a lot of us that need to hear that, but also need to believe it. And I know a lot of guys. I'm one of the people that people call when someone dies. And so I get a lot of these phone calls, whether I'm related to that person in some kind of way, or if I've never heard of that soldier ever. People call me because they want to know what to do. They want to get my thoughts or whatever it is, or maybe they just want to talk and they know they could talk to me. But yeah, there's a lot of people that suffer with it, and maybe it's a thing that they would have dealt with either way. But combat doesn't detune that. It attunes it. It gets more complicated when you have combat. It gets complicated when you've seen people die. It gets complicated when you see the horrors of war on the civilian side of things. It's one thing to have soldiers die, but when you see innocent people getting targeted and killed and assassinated, that's awful. It's awful. And so, yeah, I don't blame anybody that doesn't know what to do, and so they try to find their own way to get there, and then they get lost and get caught up in it. Yeah, that happens far too frequently.
Yeah, it's tragic. Um, when you're working for the podcast and when you're interviewing people, um, how much of your experiences and what you've done, especially if you're talking to maybe some ex-military, kind of goes into like, where is there stories that overlaps with your stories?
Oh, it's all the time. I largely don't ask questions. I more just talk about scenarios or experiences and get them to vibe off of that, because yeah, there's always a story that will allow them to talk openly about whatever it is. And and that's one of the values, is that I might be the person that puts out a message that helps a person get the next version of help. I'm not responsible for their well-being, but I can say, hey, there is help out there. Hey, there are people that care about you out there. Hey, there aren't two strikes against you. You got all kinds of strikes in life. It's not baseball. You can screw up 500 times. Just keep coming back. Just keep trying to get better. Keep trying the next thing. My brother took his own life, and he didn't have the ability to just stop and take care of himself. He felt so much pressure that he put on himself to take care of his family, that coupled with his addiction, led to his demise. And he had every chance. We did all the things. He was unable to stop that compulsion. And you have to deal with that. So could my brother have possibly survived that? I don't know. I don't know if it was possible. He was sick, sicker than I had realized. And there was nothing I could do. We would talk on the phone about how you doing, and he would be honest with me. He's like, "I'm doing terrible. I haven't slept in
Yeah,
weeks. I can't get any rest. I don't know how to fix it. I have all the pills. I have the dog. I have the I have this. I have that. I don't know what to do." And it was inevitable in this case. And if there was a path out, I don't know that he had every opportunity, right? My brother was tough. He was a little brother. He was tougher than me. He could take it, and he just ran out of taking it. He ran out of feeling like he failed his family. And that was what his suicide letter was about. It's like, I can't fail you guys anymore. And he wasn't failing anybody. But
wow.
but he couldn't get that part figured out. So this wasn't a death out of weakness. We often look at suicide as weakness, and sometimes that's fair, right? But this isn't that. He had more problems than anyone could help him figure out how to solve, and addiction didn't help it.
It's really a sad story to hear, Pete. Thank you for sharing that, though. It means a lot, but something that a lot of people go through, and it's more common than you think. And I think people aren't, kind of hide these stories away, and it's good that they talk about them now.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing about this? Because this is just sort of like, it helps frame it for other people. When someone in your life may be suicidal, you may not know. They'll hide it from you because who wants that burden? So don't ever say, instead of saying, hey, before you do anything, call me. Don't ask the person who's hanging on to the end of the rope to take a hand off to grab the damn phone. Call people, get in front of it, talk to people, figure out where they're at, just be with them. Way before it's the end of the line, get out there and see if your relationship with them might be something that they're like, I can do it. Let them know they're not alone. And you don't have to go find the saddest person in the room. Just be more connected to the people that you love, and
Yeah.
just allow them to be them, and don't try to save them, but just be there so that they know that they're not alone, because we all can feel alone in the big world. It's scary out there. So that's what I'm going to say is don't lead with call me before you kill yourself, because what the fuck are you going to do? Don't do it. Don't you think they know that? Yeah. So get out there and talk to them way before that. That's all. I'll get off my perch. Sorry.
No, it's good. I appreciate you for sharing that. Let's get to track nine. This is a great song, and I think you picked the
Yeah.
live version of this, right?
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
1994. This is Eagles with
Yeah.
Desperado.
Yeah. So first off, I mean, the Eagles are great. Some people don't love them, but I do. I think they're a fantastic band. And when I was reaching the end of my time in combat, I would play this song on the guitar, and it just kind of started to stick inside of me. And I realized that I was the desperado. There were no highs, there were no lows. It wasn't cold anymore. I was just grinding my way through life and missing it. I wasn't able to enjoy things. And when I came back, I'd be so released from having to be disciplined to do all these things that I would become this insane person and just run around and just be a cliche of like insanity and wildness from a combat guy coming home. Because that was the only gear I had. Because I'm like, I don't know, like this is world and this is that world. And instead of living in the world that was the real world, not the combat world, I was missing it. I was missing out on life. And so that song really began to resonate with me in a way that I was like, oh no, oh no, you know, they're singing to me.
Mhm.
And when a song informs you like that, like when you first break up or all these other things we talked about, I realized that like I needed to stop chasing this world as exciting as and interesting and as proud as was of the work that I did. I needed to stop because it wasn't good for me in general. And it was right. And I probably stayed too long, frankly. But yeah, that's why that song matters to me.
How long were you in the military in general, like total?
Total time between all the different ways, about 18 years, so a long time and a lot of time deployed. I mean, I've got a lot of deployment time. The modern warriors have a lot more deployment time than like 25 years ago, but
Mhm.
yeah, just a lot. And because of my job, like everybody who deploys is a hero, but because of my job and what I did, I just had a lot more exposure to danger than most guys do,
Yeah.
and had to find it. My job's not allowed to be safe, and so I had to go live on this edge. And again, that hardens you to the sweeter things in life because you're focused on threat, you're focused on the bomb, you're focused on the next thing. You're not sleeping enough, you're not taking care of yourself, and so all these things, they just yeah, desperado, man. That's what it was.
Were there any times when you were talking to people and trying to get to know someone and introduce, like being connected with them, locals, that you felt could go maybe in a different direction, that they were a lot more aggressive or not really, not
Oh
keen
my
with
gosh.
having you around, or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I survived all of it, right? And so what I think works and what actually works may not be the same thing, but it worked out for me. But yes, for sure, there were people in the room. So I guess probably the best example would be at the height of my powers when I was doing really great work and also Desperado was resonating with me. I was called to this meeting in this farmer's house. Now it's not far from the American camp, not even 500 meters, right? It's pretty close. And we sat down and just had a session where we talked and the farmers asked me questions and I asked them questions, and so it was just a regular day, a little different, right, but a very normal day to me. And I found out a couple of days later the governor who I was working with is like, hey, so I have to tell you something. The Taliban called that meeting and they told me I had to bring you and my partner Rich to it. And he said they like you guys, you're respectful, they think you're wise men, and so you're allowed to work in the area. And so we had
wow.
this approval from those guys, which is crazy. It's crazy. Even as I say it, I'm like, did that really happen? But it did. And yeah, so those guys could have said, we're going to kill them dudes and probably could have killed us right then. We would have been completely vulnerable. It would have been the perfect time to whack us. And the
Hmm.
farmers would have been like, all right, well, those guys are dead. On to the next thing. It wouldn't have mattered to anybody except for our
No.
families who would have been like, why the hell were those guys off the camp? Well, that was our job. So yeah, it for sure has happened. And if it's happened that time, it's happened other times. I just don't know about it. And And I was lucky enough that I was good enough to put together the words that allowed me to stay alive.
How many times have you had uh like what of things I've read, so I don't know how true this is
Yeah.
or factual, but this is supposed to be our these are the enemy, these are the group that we're fighting against, and then these are the group we're going to then start to fund and supply weapons to fight against this new enemy. And where
Yeah.
they once was a friend, now they're a foe, then they're a friend again. I mean, how is this realistic that this happens and you constantly are changing, the sides are changing depending on what's going on in their sort of
Yeah.
temperature?
All the time. All the time. We picked the wrong person, we picked the wrong group. Um, we fund somebody and they do something else or whatever it is. There's all kinds of that stuff where we make a decision and that impacts, maybe it might impact that country for 50 years, because
Wow.
we politically don't like this person because the people in power made a choice. I always thought like the chalk line. So we'll snap a chalk line. Anybody on that side of the chalk line, bad. Whether they care about us or not, we don't really know. We make these broad decisions about who the Taliban are and what they do and everything. But we'll go live in Taliban country. And I mean deep, dark Taliban country where it's like, this is all Taliban world. And I'll talk to these farmers doing my job, and they're like, "Do you think we're going to abandon the Taliban? They're from here. My cousins, my brothers. The Taliban is us. We are the Taliban. Whether or not we want that version of life doesn't matter. It's here, and you're not going to change that." And you realize that. And then these farmers I would talk to were so brilliant. One of them says to me, "You guys are in active negotiations with the Taliban right now to decide the future of Afghanistan. You're telling me to leave something that you guys are negotiating with?" The very next day, headlines in the paper, Obama negotiates with Taliban. It's not a political statement. It's just a thing that happened, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. So here we are trying to say, hey, don't you pick the Taliban. And then, by the way, we're and they're still in charge today. They always had some level of in charge that they were, right? And so yeah, we do that quite often, and we'll act like these guys are the worst people in the world. But to the folks who make these decisions and use these power plays, then you'll see them out to dinner with each other or whatever it is. And I'm not saying they went out to dinner with anybody, but what they say and what they do are different things. And that creates problems for folks on the ground because they really live there. They really have the consequences of this. And then we really will abandon them in a second, like we've done to
Mm.
the Kurds numerous times. Like all these Afghans that believed in us and we just pieced out. I don't know if we should have stayed or not, but what I can tell you is that when we leave an area, we don't tell anybody. We just poof disappear. And so they're like, but wait, what? I've talked to a number of people in my line of work, and I'll be the one person that's like, hey, we're leaving soon. What do we need to do to make sure that you're good? And they're like, yes, yes. One day you will leave. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm talking to you directly, man to man right now. In less than 6 weeks, we'll be gone. And then I see the terror on their face. And they're like, wait, no, they'll kill me. They'll assassinate me. No, no, you can't leave. If you leave, I'm going to die. And then they do kill that guy. And
Wow.
that belongs to me.
Yeah.
That's the darkness, right? That I can't escape. So yeah, we make those decisions all the time. And nobody cares that that dude is dead. Zero people in America care
Right.
because they can't. And the people who made that decision, right or wrong, who were going to walk away and never tell that dude that we were leaving, man, it's so ill principled, I hate it. I hate that we treat our partners that way because we'll do whatever suits us at a moment's notice and leave them in the lurch. Happens too many times.
I kind of I'm speechless on that note because you're sharing so much of stuff that it's heartbreaking to hear, but there's so much truth, and I think it's sad to see because at
Yeah,
the end of the day, that person over there, this person over here, the French neighbor that lives next to me, we're all people, and we're all trying to
yeah,
just have a decent and healthy life and trying to live, and we
right.
want to, we're similar people, even though we might, subscribe to different things here and there. So it's we're gonna move on to your last track. I think we could
All right.
keep talking about music and this for a long time, but it might be a double episode before we go.
Yeah.
Your last track is again another behemoth of music, Prince, artist formerly known as Prince, and back to Prince,
Yeah.
with Purple Rain.
Well, we did these album fights I was telling you about earlier. One of the things I realized was that, and nobody designs this, but when you close an album with Purple Rain, you're winning the last round, and it
Yeah.
might be a knockout. This song is such a monster, and I've started to learn how to play it on the guitar and kind of play it in a way and sing it in a way that I can do it. I may never get there where I'm happy with it, but and I'm not a guitarist. I kind of noodle around, right? But it's such a powerful song. And I don't know if you know the story. Maybe a lot of people do, but we have this thing in America called the Super Bowl, and the two big football teams play each other. It's American football. And in the middle, they do a halftime show. And Prince was the halftime show one year, and it was in Florida. And so there's this whole thing where like this is a second by second halftime show. Like everything is planned out. It's all efficient and designed, and it is pouring rain. Now that doesn't matter too much for the football. Those guys know how to do that. But it matters when you're going to have a stage, electrical equipment, a bunch of people wearing high heels, including Prince. And the producers call Prince in the morning, and it's raining buckets, right? And they're like, Prince, Prince, what are we going to do? It's just raining so much. And then he says, just like the boss of all bosses, he goes, can you make it rain harder? What? He's just, it does not matter. And so what does he do? Purple Rain comes on. And he plays a medley, but he lands on Purple Rain, and the rain just obliges, and it just comes down. And he makes Purple Rain show up. And even just saying that makes me a little bit emotional, makes my eyes water up a little bit. Because to be that in tune with your environment, to be so incredible that on the biggest stage you can be, when the most eyes you'll ever have on you in one time are all looking, and you ask him to make it rain harder because you are so prepared, you are so locked in, you're ready, and you have this behemoth sitting there waiting for you to close your medley out. You know, because that's what they do. They like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs, and he lands on Purple Rain. And there's one part in the halftime show. He's like, "Do you mind if I play this guitar?" No, we don't, Prince.
No.
Please, please play that guitar, and he does. And so to ever be that good at anything, or to appreciate how great that is, to see someone at their absolute peak, and maybe he did other things that were equally peaky, but that is such a powerful moment where all the pieces combine. Absolute showman, absolute master of the guitar, absolute great lyricist. You know, it's really just a crown jewel in his career. And just to have that and think about, and again, it makes all these songs we talked about, this was the one that made me at all emotional because I think about that, to get that moment in your life where everything lines up and it comes across and all you do is kill it and you elevate. Ah, man, give me as many of those moments that I can observe as you can throw in front of me, because that's the peak of human greatness. You know, whether it's a rocket going to the moon or all, this is one of those things where everything lines up and you're like, what else could you ask for, you know, in life than that? And so that's what I think about with that song, is just that moment in the Super Bowl where he's like, yeah, you think this is hard? Let me show you what incredible. That is nothing to me. I'm going to turn that into a prop. That's
Lemonade.
incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Best damn
did get to
lemonade ever.
see
Yeah.
I did get to see Prince on the Purple Rain tour. I don't know how old I was, young, but you know, and it
Yeah.
was in the Superdome in New Orleans, which is obviously huge. So it's like similar to playing for the Super Bowl. And
Yeah.
so, you know, again, I was suspect way in the back in these, you know, little seats or something far away, but still just the whole energy of that stadium with him. And again, this
Yeah.
was at the peak of Prince being Prince. Um, was incredible, and you know he did play Purple Rain, so you know it didn't rain in the inside of the
Yeah.
dome, but again he was a boss that just kind of could take over anything. I've seen some YouTube things where he was on stage with other artists. He just jump on stage and jam with them and stuff, not have to sing, just kind of play, and then just kind of took the whole song or whatever was going on to another level, and
Yeah.
then he walk off, let the song continue, and then go back to whatever he was doing. So he's a
Yeah.
incredible artist.
Yeah. Yeah, and just I'm like, how can I? There were so many songs with the 10. And by the way, thanks for letting me do that because just the 10 song choice thing. You asked me again, I'd do another 10 songs, probably similar themes, but it was just great. And I'm like, I have to land on Purple Rain because I'd learned so by doing these album fights, I'd learned so much about the sequencing of songs and how you finish something out. And Purple Rain is just a great way to close out a show. It's just so good. It's incredible. There were so many times when his album would be close with somebody, and I'm like, here comes Purple Rain. It's going to be a knockout round. Because whatever you put at the end of your, unless you knew to put up an incredible song, a lot of times it's just like, hey, let's just play a fun song and get out of here. And then here comes Prince, just like, oh, and then, like, you run out of the stadium. It's such a powerful closer. And so yeah, that's how I wanted to close my 10.
Well, if you do the two records again, let me know because I think that's incredible. I'd like to watch or listen to this and see it.
Heck,
So
I'd have you on. I'd have you do one. I can on occasion be talking to doing it, but it's so much work.
yeah.
It's crazy. And we weave the music in too, and yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Pete, thank you so much for being a guest here. I really appreciate getting to meet you and talk to you and learn about your background, but also your songs that you really sharing with us. There are some great stories here. Um, you know, when we say goodbye, I always tell the guests to three things: be kind, be humble, be love. And it sounds like you're already following that, but I just wish you the best and hope to hear more and stay in touch. What's going on with your show? What's coming up or anything you want to share to us?
The show's always got something new. Actually, in about 45 minutes, I'll be live with another friend of mine who was a spy, and he's got a new thing out. So we'll be talking. I've always got new things coming up. If my show is your bag of tea, you'll watch me. You'll be like, hey, this is pretty cool, and you'll like it. And if not, hey, that's cool too. It's not that I don't care. It's just I don't worry about who shows up because I do what I do and people either like it or they don't, and I don't worry that. I just want to create value, and if there's no value there, go do something else. Go create something else, right? Yeah, that's what I would say. I'm also starting to make movies now, and so we'll see how that goes. But there's several projects in the works, and I can't even believe I'm saying those words because how in the hell did I become a movie maker? But it appears that that's the case, and so when I get closer to the time of releasing things, I'll probably talk more about it. But there's some incredible projects on my desk right now, and I can't wait to get back to them. And like when you love what you do, I get to write things. I get to make films. I get to have these shows. I get to do this. This isn't work to me. This is just part of the richness of the worlds that we've created. As improbable as they all are. Um, yeah, and I think your show, your premise is incredible. You're going to do so many great things with it, and just meet people that are going to blow your mind. And all these folks that you've been to their concerts and everything else, yeah, they're going to say yes to you. They're going to come on. It's going to blow your mind, man. I'm excited for your journey.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I wish you the best. Good luck with the filming. I look forward to hearing more to see what when you start to go through there. Look forward to staying in touch and be well, my friend.
You too.
Pretty vacant times.
Are you ready?
It suffers for his sports jacket.